Hi, and welcome to our webinar entitled What's Important to Know About Social Security. My name is Lon Broski. I'm a certified financial planner with Pines Wealth Management in St. Louis. And the purpose for doing these webinars is really very simple. We want to help educate investors. We firmly believe that an educated investor makes for a better investor, who makes more intelligent decisions within their own financial plan, which ultimately helps keep them on track to reach their financial goals. And there's no bigger government program than Social Security. And we could spend literally the next 2 weeks, maybe even 2 months, studying Social Security and only begin to scratch the surface. So this part one today is the first part of a 2-part series about Social Security. And what we want to cover today in this part is we just want to tell you about the nuts and bolts of Social Security. But part 2, which is coming up on Wednesday, August 26th at 1 o'clock, if you haven't registered for that and you need a link to register, feel free to email us or call us, and we'll get you that link so you can get started or get registered for the August 26th session, which, by the way, in that August 26th session, we'll get into specific strategies that you can use inside of your financial plan where you can use Social Security more efficiently. But today, we just want to talk about the nuts and bolts. And so before we get started, I want to be mindful of your time. I know we still are waiting on a couple of registrants to enter into this workshop, but I know and I realize the greatest gift you could ever give anybody is the gift of time. And I certainly want to be mindful of that. So I did want to start on time at 1 o'clock, and we're probably going to be running anywhere from 25 to 35 minutes today. So I certainly don't want to go any longer than that. So depending upon how this goes, I may end up going through the last few slides very quickly. But again, plan between 25 and 35 minutes. But let's go ahead and get started with our agenda for today. So what we're going to talk about today is history. We're going to talk about how Social Security began and the early controversies that were associated with Social Security. There were mistakes made from the get-go. And we're going to talk about that. It's really hard to grasp how big Social Security is without understanding the role in which it was started. So we're going to talk about that. Next, we're going to talk about the terms and definitions of Social Security that may be helpful to you in determining those strategies, again, which we're going to talk about in the next workshop. But like the Social Security Administration is just exactly like all other government entities in that they love their acronyms. And the 3 acronyms that we think are important for you to know is PIA, FRA, and WEP, the primary insurance amount, the full retirement age, and the windfall elimination provision or period. Those 3 acronyms, we're gonna dig down a little deeper on those so we understand those a little better. And then finally, we're going to talk about why Social Security, why it is so important to a majority or a lot of Americans, not a majority, but a lot of Americans rely on the Social Security system. And we're going to go through some numbers. We're also going to talk about longevity. That is an important conversation that you need to have. If you don't have a financial advisor and you're looking to maybe hire a financial advisor, that's one of the questions that I ask in my meetings is longevity. It's an important part of, should be an important part of your planning. But let's talk about history. So here you see Miss Ida Mae Fuller. And she was really the first recipient of the monthly check from Social Security. She got her first check in 1944. It's for $22.54. But you know what? I want to take a step back. Even before Ida Mae, I want to talk about how Social Security was born. Social Security was born out of an idea during the Great Depression. Franklin Roosevelt was the president at that point. Great Depression started, if you know anything about history, with a 1929 stock market crash and essentially lasted through the beginning of World War II. So for that decade, Americans were struggling to live. And in fact, not only struggling to live, but just to survive. And living and surviving are entirely different. And specifically, the elderly were really struggling. There was a large number of elderly. In fact, the majority of the elderly during the Great Depression were poverty ridden. And so during his reelection campaign at the height of the Great Depression in 1936, Franklin Roosevelt said, and I'll quote him in one of his reelection speeches, that some measure of protection against the loss of a job and against poverty-ridden old age is needed. And out of that speech, out of that idea was born Social Security. Really to combat at that time was an epidemic of elderly Americans being stuck in poverty because they weren't of working age, obviously, and they couldn't find work. And in that time, even if you were eligible to find work during the Great Depression, it was very difficult for you to find work and you were of working age. Imagine if you were retired and the Great Depression hit. Poverty was a reality for a great deal of Americans who were elderly. So Ida Mae Fuller. Ida Mae Fuller was the first monthly beneficiary, and she received a check for $22.54. She started receiving it in 1940. Prior to 1940, when Social Security first started, it was started and actually started paying out benefits in 1937. But between 1937 and 1940, Social Security benefits was actually paid out in lump sum. Can you imagine getting a lump sum check versus the monthly checks that we see today? And Ida Mae Fuller was the first beneficiary. She lived to the ripe old age of 100, and she received over $22,000 in benefits. So the next time that you're at that trivia contest, Ida Mae Fuller just may be an answer to one of your trivia questions. She was the first monthly recipient of Social Security. However, when it started in 1937, when the idea was being floated around, when Congress was developing the Social Security Administration, the Social Security system, it wasn't without its critics. One of its biggest, most vocal critics was the publishing tycoon, William Randolph Hearst. And William Randolph Hearst used all the power at his disposal of his newspapers and his other media, magazines, newspapers, to run a campaign of negativity towards this program. He said that every single person in the United States would now, if the Social Security Administration was put into force, that every single American would have to wear a dog tag around their neck, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You're going to have to wear a dog tag. Of course, the commissioner at that time, who was Arthur Altmeyer, immediately said, no, we're rejecting that idea. We are not going to require everyone to wear a dog tag. However, we are going to give everyone a card. And that Social Security card, when it was first issued in 1937, interestingly enough, looks almost exactly like the card that we receive today. There's very little change that is made in that card. But back then, you had to apply for Social Security benefits at the time that you were going to be receiving them. I can remember when I was a teenager, I didn't get a Social Security card until I started working. That was the first time I had to apply for a Social Security number because I had to start paying taxes. Well, my kids, who are older now, my oldest is 23, we had to apply for a Social Security card at the same time we applied for his birth certificate. So today, you're given a Social Security number right out of the gate, right when you're born. Whereas back then, you only had to apply for it when you're eligible for benefits. So even then, it was not without controversy. There was also some problems. There was a New York wallet manufacturer in 1938 who ran a massive ad campaign that touted how the Social Security card would conveniently fit in their wallet. And this was a national campaign. And so in order to do that, they had a picture of an actual Social Security card of a secretary at the time. They published her Social Security card fitting nicely into that, an actual picture of her Social Security card in the wallet. And they published her Social Security number, which was 078051120. And fast forward from 1938, when it was first published, 5 years later, 5,700 people have applied for benefits under that Social Security number. And since that was first published, over 40,000 people have tried to file Social Security benefits under Hilda Wichter. So you can say that Hilda Wichter was the first really victim of identity fraud, of identity theft. Talk about that a lot today. We had a workshop last fall for clients on cybersecurity. That's a very important topic. Well, identity theft was going on really since the very beginning when Social Security started, and Hilda was its first victim. I'm sure she received a lot of visits from the FBI in her years after her Social Security card was published. But let's talk about your benefits. Let's talk about how your benefits are determined. Well, you have to be eligible for Social Security in order to even talk about benefits. And what does that take? Well, that takes 40 credits. And how do you earn 40 credits? Well, you can only earn a maximum of 4 credits per year. And every credit that you earn, you have to earn at least $1,410. Now, this $1,300, this is an old picture here, but $1,300 was last year's figure. For 2020, it's been updated to $1,410. So you have to earn $1,410. And by the way, pay Social Security tax on that $1,410 to receive 1 credit. And the maximum credits that you could receive in 1 year is 4 credits. So once again, simple math tells me that if I can only receive 4 credits 1 year, it's going to take me 10 years to get my 40 credits. Then I can become eligible to receive Social Security benefits. And by the way, just because you're eligible and you have 40 credits, it has nothing to do with how much you're going to receive. We'll talk about that in a moment. But in 2020, the Social Security wage base is $137,700. So the first $137,700, you will pay FICA tax on that money. If you earn anything above $137,000, you will not pay FICA tax on anything you earn over and above that $137,700. The FICA rate currently in 2020 is 7.65, which is broken down into 6.2% of that 7.65 goes to Social Security. The remaining 1.45 goes to Medicare. And of course, if you're self-employed, there's the other half of that 7.65 or another 7.65 that if you're self-employed, you will pay that. If you work for a company, your employer pays the other 7.65%. So actually the overall rate is 15.3%, and that's split between you and your employer. And here's the other thing. Here's the other misconception that we see a lot of is that the Social Security system is going to run out. And I've heard dates from 2028 all the way up to 2045. But the number that I keep hearing is 2035. In 2035, Social Security is going to run out of money. Absolutely 100% false. Social Security cannot run out of money. Social Security is a pay-as-you-go system. Those that are working and paying that FICA tax that I mentioned earlier are supporting those that are on Social Security. What's going to happen in 2035 is the surplus that Social Security now enjoys will no longer be there. And at that point in time, there's going to have to be changes that are going to be made. I don't know what those changes are. Nobody does. Maybe they take the wage base for Social Security, they increase that to $400,000. So if you're fortunate enough to earn up to $400,000, maybe you pay FICA tax on up to $400,000. That has been talked about as a solution. But either way, Social Security cannot run out of money. It's a pay-as-you-go system. It's going to be here regardless of when you're eligible. You will get benefits under the Social Security system, but you got to have 40 credits in order to apply for them. And of course, the standing joke is there's only one person that I know that is happy on Monday, and that's the person that's retired. I have a neighbor who retired on Monday, and that guy's every Monday when I'm leaving for the office, he's out front waving, picking up his paper, just smiling from ear to ear because he's not going to work on Monday. And let's talk about some abbreviations that, again, are important for you to be familiar with and are helpful, could be helpful in determining which strategy to use. So these terms certainly are helpful to know. Your first is primary insurance amount, your PIA. Social Security will again refer to that acronym, and PIA stands for primary insurance amount. Your next is your full retirement age. Your full retirement age, or your FRA, is based strictly on the year of your birth. And last is the WEP provision, the Windfall Elimination provision. They'll refer to that specifically. That only applies to individuals who are eligible. And again, you need 40 credits, who are eligible to receive benefits, but perhaps after they received eligibility, or even before they were eligible to receive their Social Security benefits, they moved to a job or an employer where you didn't pay, or where they didn't pay Social Security tax. An example would be a government entity. If you work for the state, if you work for the federal government in any capacity, you will not pay FICA tax, but you do receive a pension. Your pension, your Social Security is going to be offset by that pension that you received. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a couple of minutes, but let's break them down individually. Let's talk about your primary insurance amount. Now, for some reason, and I don't know why, don't ask me why, but the government likes to complicate things. Your primary insurance amount essentially is your benefit. That's your monthly benefit. Why they just don't call it monthly benefit, I don't know. But your primary insurance amount is a calculation. Now, if you would like to know specifically more how this calculation works, we can break that down for you in our office. We'll be more than happy to do that. I'm not going to bore you with the details now, but the formula includes three important things. It includes, number one, it includes your earnings. Okay. It includes your years worked and includes your age. You take all of those factors together and you get your primary insurance amount. Interesting thing here, and I want to focus a little bit on your earnings. Your earnings, okay? That is based upon a formula, and they call that AIME, AIME. That's your AIME number. And your AIME acronym stands for Average Indexed Monthly Earnings. Once again, there's the government showing their love of acronyms. That AIME number is your average index monthly earnings. And what is that? Well, that is based on the 35 years of your work history in which you earned the most. So the highest amount, the highest last 35 years that you earn the most, that goes into figuring your earnings, or your AIME, in order to figure your primary insurance amount. Now, those 35 years don't have to be consecutive. If you earned a lot of money early in your career and maybe you're not earning money at the later stages of your career, doesn't matter. They're going to take the highest 35. And if some of those 35 include zeros, then you're gonna have a zero. Okay, but this calculation goes into your primary insurance amount, these three factors. And there's also some other percentages involved. But again, I don't want to bore you with all the details on how that primary insurance amount is actually calculated. But your earnings have a big part of that, and it's all has to do with your AIME number. Of course, the other thing for eligibility we just talked about is your 40 credits. That determines your eligibility right out of the gate for your individual benefits. Your individual retirement benefits are dependent upon your primary insurance amount and your eligibility. Full retirement age. Again, FRA is the acronym there you need to be familiar with and might be helpful to you. Your full retirement age is strictly based upon your age, when you were born. So if you're born before I said earlier, it depends upon your age. I'm sorry, that wasn't correct. It's based upon your year that you were born. So let's look a little closer. Here you see the scale or the schedule for full retirement age. If you were born before 1954, your full retirement age is 66. If you were born after 1960 or 1960 or later, your full retirement age is 66. And if you were born in between 54 and 60, it's a graduated scale. So essentially every year between 54 and 1960, you add on 2 months. So in this case, if you're born in 1957, your full retirement age would be 66 and 6 months. That determines your when you will receive 100% of your primary insurance amount. That's the reason why you need to know that FRA. That is that your FRA equals 100% of your primary insurance amount. Now, the earliest that you could claim benefits is age 62. So you can file early. That's before your full retirement age, your FRA. And Social Security is going to penalize you for taking your benefits early. So you can file at age 62, but that penalty is going to be a percentage. And once again, Social Security, I don't know why they do this. For whatever reason, they decided they were going to do a formula on your penalty. And the penalty is this: 0.5% up to 36 months prior to your full retirement age. So if you retire 3 years before your full retirement age, your penalty is 0.5% for every month up to 36 months that you retire early. Then the formula goes to 0.5% per month for the next 24 months. So if your retirement age or your FRA is 67, you could retire or claim Social Security benefits at age 62. You're going to get, if you take that formula, that 5/9 and that 5/12, essentially you're going to get a 30% reduction. And oh, by the way, that 30% reduction stays with you forever. You retire at age 62, you're going to receive a 30% reduction, and then you get to your FRA of 67. The Social Security Administration is not going to bump up your benefit as if you had retired at your FRA. That 30% penalty or reduction stays with you for the rest of your life. Doesn't go away. How do I know what my Social Security benefit is going to be? Depends upon what age you are. If you're age 60 or older, you're going to receive a paper statement. If you're under 60, you got to go to the website ssa.gov, and now you have to register for an account. So if you're under 60, you only can get your statement online. If you're over 60, they will send you a paper statement. So be aware of that. And oh, by the way, when you have to register or set up your account through the ssa.gov, be prepared to answer some questions that, number one, it's scary that they know that, but they're going to go back in the archives a long way. I know when I registered for my Social Security account, they knew the first car that I'd ever owned. And even I had forgotten. And that was way back in 1990 when I graduated and I bought my first car. Well, they knew that. And they had made me choose which car did I know in order to verify my identity. So be prepared to answer some tough questions to verify your identity when you establish that Social Security account. So in 2020, what are the maximum benefits? The average benefits. The average benefit for the retired worker in 2020 is $1,500. For the average retired couple, it's $2,500. And for the maximum that you can earn is $3,011 for 2020. And by the way, that's indexed for inflation. Some years are bigger than other, that inflation adjustment. But these are what the figures are for 2020. And that $3,000 amount does not have anything to do with your eligibility. That 40 credits only determines whether or not you can receive Social Security. In order to get this maximum, let's say I mentioned earlier that the Social Security wage base was $137,700. If you earned $137,700 for 35 years, if you're fortunate enough to do that, then you're going to be at this maximum benefit of $3,011. But let's take an actual example. We've been talking about early retirement. We've been talking about your FRA. Let's take an actual example. So here you have an individual that was born in 1958 who is age 62 in 2020. His full retirement age is 66 and 8 months, and his primary insurance amount is $1,500 per month. And we're not going to, for illustrative purposes, assume that there's going to be any cost of living adjustments, which is what COLA stands for. COLA stands for cost of living adjustments. So In this scenario, if he retires at full retirement age, 66 and 8 months, this particular individual will receive $438,000 if they live to age 90. They retire early at age 62, they're going to receive $375,000, about $60,000 less than what they would have had they waited till full retirement age. If they wait to file to age 70, now they're going to receive $478,000 more, or $40,000 more than what they're receiving at full retirement age. Between your full retirement age and age 70, you will receive, and you do not file, you will receive what's called delayed credits. We'll talk a little bit more about this in our next workshop. But you can earn an additional amount that is guaranteed to you, and the specific formula for that additional amount is 0.8%. Remember earlier I talked about the percentages if you're going to retire at age 62, the penalties. Well, you can earn bonuses. We'll call them bonuses, even though Social Security doesn't use that exact term. But you can earn an additional 0.8% for every month you delay filing for Social Security after your full retirement age. They call those delayed credits. A moment ago, I said bonuses, and I apologize. That was the wrong word. Social Security uses delayed credits. Okay. There's no material benefit for you to file after age 70. Age 70 is going to be the last age that you file. There's no benefit, because once you reach past age 70, you get no more delayed credits. So that's the last age you're absolutely going to file, is age 70. So keep that in mind. So let's talk about the windfall elimination provision. The windfall elimination provision is for those individuals who have worked for an employer where they've paid that FICA tax, paid that Social Security tax, and at the same time worked for an employer and has not paid Social Security tax. Again, work for that government agency or non-for-profit. There's a chart here that you're going to be mindful of. But again, once again, even before we talk about the SWEP, you got to be eligible. You got to have your 40 credits. If you have your 40 credits in and are eligible to receive benefits, and then you work for that government agency, or you work for a company that does not take Social Security tax out of your paycheck, this is what your adjustment is going to look like. If you spend 30 or more years working for an employer where you're not paying Social Security tax, and you are also eligible to receive Social Security benefits, you're going to get 10% of your Social Security amount. So you're going to have a 90% adjustment. If you've worked 20% or 20 years or fewer in that job where you didn't pay Social Security taxes, your adjustment, or you're going to receive 60% of your Social Security benefit or your eligible primary insurance amount, the adjustment's going to be 40% there. Okay, so just be mindful of that. If you're working for an employer and you're not paying FICA tax. So be wary of that, because the windfall elimination provision is going to sneak up and get you. And we do have a couple of clients who are teachers that, again, because their pension has kicked in, they are subject to the WEP provision simply because they have that teacher's pension that they never paid Social Security tax on. So let's go over some facts here. There's a lot of misconceptions about Social Security, but there are some facts here that are important and can help you, again, make those important decisions about Social Security. There's over 66 million people who receive Social Security each month, who receive that check each month. And you can receive Social Security benefits in one of three ways. If you're retired, if you're a survivor, or you're on disability. Those are the only three ways that you can receive Social Security. And over those 66 million, 44 million are just retirement benefits. So over half of those that are on Social Security are receiving benefits through the retirement program. In fact, over 60, as I said, 66 million people. That means 1 in 5 people get some sort of Social Security benefit. So if you were to walk out on the street today and talk to 5 random people, chances are that one of those 5 are receiving Social Security benefits. In fact, 1 of 4 families receive Social Security benefits. So chances are there's someone that you know, either close to you, either maybe you have parents or grandparents, or maybe someone that you didn't think of, but there are over 66 million people who benefit from Social Security, 1 in 4 families and 1 in 5 Americans, and a majority of those receiving are retired. But let's talk about why Social Security is so important. Look no further than senior Americans. Here's the facts. 48% of those that are receiving retirement benefits, senior Americans, 48% of married couples and 69% of unmarried individuals receive more than half of their income from Social Security. Half. You want to know why Social Security is a political football and why it is so important to America? Because of that statistic alone. If you drill down a little further, you find that 21% of those that are receiving retirement benefits from Social Security, 21% of married couples and 44% of individuals, they're receiving over 90% of their income from Social Security. That is their financial plan, is Social Security. Social Security is not going away. It is an enigma that will be here, has been around since the mid-30s and will continue to be around for many generations to come. As I said earlier, it's a pay-as-you-go system, and there are a lot of individuals who rely on Social Security. That's why it's so important to know about. Another important aspect of Social Security is, and I might just pose you this question, and obviously you can't answer it, but this is one of the most important questions that I ask when I sit down with a new client and we are preparing a financial plan, is how long do you think you're going to live? You think you'll live to age 65, maybe 75, 85, 95, past 95? And it's interesting to hear the responses that I get because they're all across the scale. Some clients don't think they're going to live very long. Other clients think they're going to live a long time. I had one client, which was a first for me, in a meeting recently, tell me that he wanted a plan for him living to 125. Well, the facts behind life expectancy, if you're age 65 today, you think you're going to die early, or your chances aren't very good, you might want to rethink that strategy. Because 1 out of 3 who are 65 today will live past 90. 1 out of 7 will live past 95. And if you're still married, or if you're married, not still married, if you're married and you're age 65 today, both of you are at least 65, one of you is going to live to age 95. Longevity is one of the greatest risks to your retirement that I see. We often talk a lot of times about inflation in our meetings with our clients when you're doing your financial plan. That's the other big risk. But one of your biggest is life expectancy. You live too long. And at age 65 today, living longer is a reality for a lot of people. As I said earlier, over 66 million people receive Social Security benefits because people are living longer than ever. And there are options if you can wait. Remember, I talked earlier about that delayed credit between your full retirement age and age 70. There are some benefits to waiting longer because you're going to be living longer. If you're going to be living past 95, maybe you do want to delay filing, receive those credits, and help you with your longevity. So let's go over some real quick questions here as we wrap this up. But full retirement age, we talked about that. Depends upon the year of your birth. We also talked about the primary insurance amount, why it's so helpful to know how that's calculated out in order to determine what your benefit is going to be. Again, that's that primary insurance amount. We also talked about the windfall elimination provision. We talked about why Social Security is such a political football, why it gets bounced around, and because of the massive size of it and the amount of Americans who rely on it. And then we talked about who receives Social Security and that importance. So, recapping what we just talked about today, we talked about the history of Social Security, how it started. Ida Mae Fuller. It's the answer to the trivia question, right? Ida Mae Fuller. We also talked about the PIA, the FRA, and the WEP, why it's important or why it might be helpful for you to know that. And then why Social Security is important is because so many people rely on it for their financial plan. What are we talking about next week? Again, on the 26th, we're going to talk about strategies and some options that you may want to think about. Again, we talked about a little bit about filing early, your full retirement age, and delayed credits. We're also going to be talking about strategies for couples, as well as touching on survivor benefits. Or you can visit our website at pineswealth.com. We have an ability to schedule meetings through there as well. You can also follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. As always, thank you for your time. I appreciate you being here today, and hopefully you learned a little bit about Social Security. Thanks for your time, and have a great rest of your week.